We're on to the blood and lymphatic systems, and they kind of go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other, and you'll see why in a bit. But also, this is kind of two separate systems. There's the blood, the study of the blood, hematology, and the lymphatic systems is going to bring in our immune system. So this will be kind of a twofold, blood and the immune system, because they're inseparable. So as usual, I'm going to go over the functioning and anatomy of the blood system, not the circulatory system, just the blood, and then talk about the word parts specific for the blood system. Then I'll switch to the lymphatic system, do the function and anatomy of the lymphatic system, and then the word parts for the lymphatic system. So what are the functions of the blood? There's a lot of them, and mostly it involves moving things around the body. That's really one of the main functions of the blood. That includes moving nutrients from the gut to the tissues, moving waste from tissues to the kidneys and lungs for excretion, moving oxygen from the lungs to the tissues, moving hormones around from the glands throughout the body, moving heat to the surface of the body where it can be dumped, or storing it in the core where it's conserved. And of course, it contains white blood cells, which are your immune system, as well as antibodies made by white blood cells or proteins that are part of your immune system circulate in the blood. I don't really have any pictures of blood, but the anatomy of the blood is composed of a liquid portion called the plasma, and then the cells or parts of cells that are called the formed elements. Plasma is 98% water or so, with a whole bunch of stuff dissolved in it. And what kinds of stuff you find dissolved are nutrients and wastes and electrolytes and hormones and certain types of proteins that are dissolved in it. Most anything that blood is carrying is going to be dissolved in the plasma, or at least carried through the plasma attached to these proteins. The formed elements of the blood consist of, again, the cells or cell parts, and these are made in the red bone marrow inside of certain bones. It includes the red blood cells, whose job it is to transport oxygen from the lungs to the tissues. The white blood cells, which consist of 5 different cell types: lymphocytes, monocytes, macrophages, basophils, and eosinophils. Those make up your immune system. And then platelets, which are called thrombocytes, and these are actually just fragments of cells that are involved in starting the process of clotting blood when you break a vessel. So here are the word parts related to blood. We know this already. Hemo and hemato both refer to blood. Hemolysis refers to breaking blood, but it actually, in real life, means breaking red blood cells. Hematology, of course, is the study of blood and blood diseases. Cyto refers to cells in any context, but in this context, of course, the various types of blood cells. Erythrocytes, erythro means red, so these are the red blood cells. Leukocytes would be the white blood cells. Thrombocytes are the platelets. They're not actually cells, parts of cells. Thrombocytosis would be a condition of the thrombocytes. Again, leuko means white, so leukocytes are white blood cells. Leukemia literally just means a condition of white blood, but it's an overproduction of cancer of white blood cells. Phlebo, funny word, and veno both mean veins specifically. So these both mean veins. And we'll come across this in the circulatory system, but phlebotomy literally means a procedure to make an incision into a vein. Functionally, phlebotomy is drawing blood from somebody. So a phlebotomist isn't just somebody who makes incisions into veins, it's somebody who draws blood. A venospasm would be, of course, a contraction of a vein. Coagulo refers to blood clotting. So anticoagulants, often referred to as blood thinners, they don't change the thickness of the blood, but they do interfere with clotting. An anticoagulant keeps the blood from clotting when it shouldn't. Coagulopathy would be a disease of clotting. So you're not clotting properly. Either you're clotting in inappropriate times and places, or you're never clotting, like in hemophilia. Thrombo, again, refers to clots. So a thrombocyte is a platelet that's involved in starting the whole clotting process. A thrombosis would be a condition of blood clots somewhere, usually abnormal blood clots where they don't belong. The lymphatic system is a little more involved, I guess. So as blood flows through the smallest blood vessels, the capillaries, it loses some fluid into the tissues and into the spaces between the cells of the tissues. And if that fluid's not returned, it will just build up in those tissues and cause an edema or a swelling, then that can damage the tissue in several different ways. We need to recapture that fluid that has leaked out of capillaries and get it back to circulation. And that's the job of the lymphatic system. It has vessels that pick up the excess fluid and transport it back to circulation. The lymphatic system also contains components of the immune system, white blood cells that leave the blood and take up residence in lymph nodes. You've probably heard of lymph nodes before. They're just basically little sacs of white blood cells that the fluid that's being returned to circulation has to pass through. And those white blood cells kind of monitor that fluid for anything that doesn't belong. There are other structures that are part of the lymphatic system that don't deal with fluid being returned to the circulation, but are also monitoring for invasion by foreign bodies. So that would include the spleen, which monitors the blood for foreign bodies, bacteria, viruses, etc. The tonsils would be another example of a lymphoid tissue that monitors for harmful bacteria coming in through the nose and mouth, which would be a common place of entrance for bacteria. And they also contain collections of white blood cells that are there to respond if they find something. If we take a look at it, over here on the far left, you see true circulatory system, an arteriole, a small artery leading to a capillary bed, the smallest blood vessels. And this is where fluid is leaking out. As fluid crosses through these vessels, it's leaking into this tissue, then picked up by these lymphatic vessels. These are called lymphatic capillaries. So if you look close up, these are the cells of the tissue, and then the interstitial fluid is the space and the fluid that fills the space between cells. And as that fluid leaks out of circulation, it's then picked up by this lymphatic capillary. And the capillaries join other capillaries into bigger and bigger vessels. They carry it all the way up and flow through these lymph nodes. So coming from extremities, that lymph fluid that's been picked up by these lymph vessels has to pass through several of these lymph nodes before it gets returned to circulation. So all that fluid comes back to these veins right here. Fluid from the right side of the head, the right arm, and all lower extremities gets returned to the right side. Fluid from the left arm and the left side of the head gets returned on the left side back into circulation, back into these veins, and back into the circulatory system. But before it gets returned, it has to pass these lymph nodes, and these are filled with white blood cells. So as the fluid flows through here, those white blood cells are on alert, looking for things that don't belong, and actively, if they find something, they send a signal out to the rest of the body saying, be on alert, I found something, let's kill it before it has a chance to get a foothold. Lymphoid tissues also include the thymus because it's a gland that's responsible for the maturation of white blood cells, certain types of white blood cells, but also the tonsils and the spleen, which sits over here on the left side of the abdomen. I just put in this one to show you the different tonsils. The pharyngeal tonsils are also known as the adenoids. And then you have the palatine tonsils at the back of the soft palate and the lingual tonsils at the back of the tongue. Again, they're kind of guarding the entrances for bacteria and things that you want to be alert to, foreign things that just don't belong. So here are the terms for the lymphatic system. Lympho, of course, refers to lymph. Lymph is tissue fluid that's been taken up by lymphatic vessels. It goes from being called tissue fluid to lymph just by moving from the tissue into the lymphatic vessel. Here's where we get that root adeno coming in. Lymphadenitis, this refers to lymph node. They originally thought those lymph nodes were glands. We later learned they weren't glands, but the name stuck. That's why it uses the adeno here. So this is an inflammation of a lymph node, not a lymph gland. Occasionally, you'll still hear them called lymph glands, but they're lymph nodes. And they're swollen because they detected something that shouldn't be there, some foreign body, a bacteria or a virus, and they're busy fighting it. A lymphoma would be a mass, usually in one of those lymph nodes. Myelo, we saw this in the nervous system chapter. In this context, it means bone marrow. So myelitis would be an inflammation of the bone marrow. Myelodysplasia means a bad development of the bone marrow. So something's gone wrong in the bone marrow that creates the red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Anemia, of course, refers to blood again. Anemia, we saw this in the very first chapter, very first video, I think, literally means a condition of no blood. Functionally, what it means is that the blood can't carry oxygen for some reason. It's not carrying enough oxygen. Leukemia is a condition of white blood cells. That's literally what it means. Functionally, what this means is it's a tumor, a cancer of the bone marrow causing development of too many white blood cells that are non-functional. Of course, tonsillo refers to tonsils. So you can have tonsillitis, an inflammation, or tonsillectomy, get them removed. Spleno refers to the spleen. So splenomegaly would be an enlargement of the spleen, or take the whole thing out, splenectomy. Thymo refers to the thymus again, that we had that in the endocrine chapter. A thymoma would be a mass on it. A thymectomy would be removal of it. Immuno refers to anything having to do with your immune system. So immunology is the study of the immune system. An immunoglobulin is an antibody. A globulin is a protein specific to the immune system, and all immunoglobulins are antibodies. Penia, as we saw before, refers to a lack of, deficiency of. So cytopenia is a lack of some type of blood cell in this context. A leukocytopenia, a lack of white blood cells. Erythrocytopenia, a lack of red blood cells. Thrombocytopenia, a lack of platelets. Just to remind you, myelo in the nervous system chapter referred to the spinal cord. So again, this is one of those context-specific roots. You need to know what system you're talking about, whether it means bone marrow or it means spinal cord.